Welcome to our webinar on Do You Qualify for the SBIR STTR Proposal Lab 2020? This webinar will be recorded, so this will be available on our website to review again if you guys want to. And we're going to get started. So thank you so much for joining. And I believe that you joined because you're the inventor. You're somebody who is thinking about the future, how this invention will impact the humanity, how to build a business that's going to be the big source of funding the economy, feeding the economy, and changing the world, essentially. So creativity is thinking up new things, innovation is doing new things. And the question is really, how are we going to be doing, and how can we help you do those new things? So SBIR STTR Proposal Lab is really a component of the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Program initiative, and it is one of the largest sources of early stage capital for technology commercialization in the United States, which is roughly $3 billion in annual funding. It is meant to stimulate technological innovation, and essentially it is small business focused, so it is looking to use small businesses to meet federal research and development needs. And it is also specifically encouraging underrepresented small businesses, basically socially and socioeconomically disadvantaged small businesses should participate in this. There's always a huge priority given to those businesses, although our lab is open to all businesses, and so is the SBIR STTR program. So now, the one really cool thing about that is that you're basically invited to go ahead and figure out how you're going to commercialize your business, how you're going to be contributing to research and development overall, and how you're going to benefit from the government's priority on increasing competition, productivity, and economic growth. The government, essentially, because it prioritizes economic growth and small business growth, essentially provide to you seed capital. And that seed capital, they look at your commercial potential, and they examine that through those proposals that we would help you develop. And those awards are comparable to the size of angel investments in the private sector. And the government is willing to accept the risk in support of different agency missions that would be actually funding this, except the government doesn't take a portion of your company and you don't have to repay the money. Essentially, this is not a loan. They essentially give you the capital so that you can go ahead and implement your business idea. So let me just go through the quick overview in case you're new to this arena. So SBIR STTR essentially has 3 phases in that process. And phase 1 is that's what our lab is for, is phase 1, is the concept phase. It lasts 6 to 12 months and supports the exploration of the technical merit or feasibility of your idea or technology. And you retain the rights to the intellectual property. The government doesn't want it, you keep it, even though they give you the money. And it is also an opportunity to obtain additional funding to continue technology development once you have finished the phase 1. Now, phase 2 awards, those may last up to 2 years and expand upon phase 1 results. And during this time, the R&D work is performed. And then during the phase 3, there's a period where the innovation moves from the lab into the marketplace. There is no actual funding, but there's essentially support there and to find funding in the private sector or secure it from other agency funds. This is where you essentially get an entry point into government agency, and they find a way to buy from you so that you can fund continued development of your idea. So there are lots of SBIR advantages. So imagine this, there is a tremendous amount of money that is going from the government into the private sector funding the company. So from fiscal year 2009, there have been more than 112,000 awards, with over 26.9 billion of no strings attached funding. No strings attached is really, really amazing part of this. And also, what's really, really important, and a lot of companies kind of overlook that, they say, okay, well, that's not that much money. It's not going to completely change my company, especially phase one amount. But what happens is when the government has reviewed your proposals in this highly competitive environment and has awarded this money to you, yes, this money may not be much, but imagine how it builds your credibility when you're pitching your company to investors and you're saying that government, with its scientists, with its experts that actually review this, put this through the scrutinies of the government evaluation process, has validated your idea, and they thought you were valuable, and you were valid, and you were viable as a business. And that's what is so really important about this. Not just that amount of money that you initially get or get later, but also that credibility that is being built. And also, as I had mentioned earlier, it creates a pathway to sole source of awards or other government contracts. So essentially, that's your foot in the door. That's how the government gets to know you. This is how they figure out, okay, this actually is aligns with our mission, right? So this SBIR STTR proposal lab, I'm going to talk to that a little bit more again, actually is geared towards the National Science Foundation, the NSF. And the NSF, by its nature, is not an organization that actually will buy your services afterwards. However, in a follow-on to this phase one award, you can go ahead and apply to other agencies that will recognize the NSF's phase one, and that's where you get a pathway to the government award. So you get that initial seed money that is fairly significant resource, and then it allows you to go ahead and apply elsewhere, anywhere in the government where you feel that your idea may be actually funded and bought, like including the Department of Defense, for example. And it allows you to enhance the capability of your team. It's not just your company, but you could also bring in a large or a small subcontractor, or even a research institution. So you have a lot of flexibility with this. So now SBIR, that's essentially the one flavor of that. Then you also have the STTR. STTR essentially is a research institution technology transfer kind of funding, right? So this is where research institutions transfer technology to small businesses so that you could commercialize that technology. It's a collaboration between you and a research institution. It could be in a university, it could be a lab, whatever it is, right? And it expands public and private partnerships. And this includes joint ventures for small businesses and nonprofit research institutions. It requires a formal collaboration with a research institution. And what you can do there is, if you need to subcontract a large portion of the award, which you can do up to 60% of the research and development, can go to nonprofit research institution. If they want a lot from that, you can do that. STTR allows you to do that, whereas SBIR actually has a much more modest portion of that. We're going to talk about that again in a little bit. And the award goes to your small business, and you maintain overall control and responsibility. So even though you may have a huge university that's really powerful underneath you, you're the one in charge in this particular scenario. So now let me tell you about what this initiative is. What is the SBIR STTR Proposal Lab? Why are we doing this webinar in the first place? Why are we recording this? If you're listening to this recording later on our website, why did we make this recording? So TEDCO, which is the Maryland source for technical startup success, they are the Maryland seed capital. They are investing into technology businesses that are promising. They won the SBA FAST grant, Small Business Administration's FAST grant, for the second year in a row. And we are part of that team. So we are the GovCon incubator. OST Global Solutions, that's the big firm that actually houses the GovCon incubator for small government contractors, startups. In the Maryland SBDC, whose mission is to help Maryland small businesses essentially put this together. We ran this lab very successfully last year. We have a ton of lessons learned, and this year we're going to do this again, and we're going to be helping you put proposals together and training you in every aspect of business development. It is focused primarily on Maryland small businesses, so everybody who gets accepted to it has to be a Maryland small business. But we're also prioritizing in our acceptance process women-owned, socioeconomically disadvantaged businesses, and rural businesses. So if we have a question as to who the seat goes to, then we're going to decide in favor of those businesses that are typically underrepresented in the program. However, I encourage strongly everybody to apply if you're a small business. In addition to SBA's and TEDCO's funds, the team contributes its own time and resources to develop and conduct the lab. So what you're going to see is there is a small fee to join, which is $600, which is, you know, a huge program with a lot of training, and it's very intensive. We're going to be helping manage your process. I'm going to go through all the milestones in a minute. It's going to be very hands-on. You're going to work with the cohort. You're going to form new relationships. That's a really exciting process. But what happens is we're heavily subsidized and funded by the government and by TEDCO. Plus, we're also donating our own time. So it's a huge thing. It's what you are asked to pay is literally a tiny little fraction. We want just to make sure that you have skin in the game in this process and you're invested in that process. And that's why we're asking you to contribute to that. And this is a big project to help you be successful, not only with the proposal, but set you up for the future, actually show you how to create a business development machine in your business so that you can grow in the government arena and develop some really core skills that are required for you to grow your business. So it is going to be a limited cohort. So it's going to be 20 companies. They're going to be filled by 31st of December. And the seats are limited. So guys, I know the deadline is to apply until the 31st of December, but we're on a first come, first serve kind of in a first come, first serve situation. And basically, we're gonna, once we accept the people, whoever applies afterwards, we may put you on a waiting list, but you may not be able to get in this year. And there's always a question of whether next year is going to happen, because this is all subject to funding, as you may understand. So essentially, we're going to be all writing proposals to the National Science Foundation. We're going to have a schedule. We're going to have workspaces managed and overseen by the team that's going to be running this cohort. And essentially, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be submitting those proposals to the National Science Foundation. It has a rolling schedule. So we were able to make this lab kind of longer over time. So it starts in January and it goes on until June, so that you guys are busy and you are able to juggle your daytime work and the proposal work that's fairly intense. You're able to integrate all the learning into this process. You're able to do all the homework because it's fairly intense. We actually made it twice as long, or like 2.5 times as long as last time, because of the feedback of the members who were just absolutely overwhelmed by this process. We're making it more manageable so that you can do whatever you do during the daytime. So the NSF phase 1 is $225,000, and then you can later bid on phase 2 to other agencies. And if you're interested, you need to check if you qualify. You qualify if you have an innovative technology idea, if you're trying to launch, or if you're trying to grow your existing Maryland small business. So you don't have to have a business to start, but you would need to register it. And essentially, it would have to be in Maryland. So if you guys are outside of the area, you would have to register in Maryland. So you want to increase your chances of winning SBIR or STTR funding, and want a budget-friendly proposal training and guidance that leads to a professional and competitive proposal. And if so, you've come to the right place. So let me walk through what the lab is about. So you have fiscal year 20 NSF SBIR STTR kind of cycle, right? So the project would start, and we're going to go ahead and going to help you review your ongoing National Science Foundation pitch reviews. We're going to give you initial training, preparation materials. We're going to give you some recordings to show you what to do, how to prep, what reading you need to do in advance. And then workshop 1, essentially, and you can see the schedule on our website, the current schedule on our website to make sure you're available during those dates. Workshop 1 is SBIR STTR kickoff, outline content, walkthrough, and the business model. We're going to actually work with you through that. And oh, by the way, I may have not mentioned that, but it's all going to be in person in Rockville, Maryland. So we are actually requiring you to be there in person during those workshops. They're very intense, they're highly interactive, very hands-on. So you want to be there, you want to be on site. We've had packed training room last year. People got a ton out of that. So it is a really exciting process. Now, workshop number 2, we're going to develop a project plan. We're going to talk about commercialization. This is where companies typically fail in their proposals. The success rate, like your typical success rate for those kinds of proposals is like 10%. So it's very low. And this is where the companies fail a lot of times. And so TEDCO has a great resource for market research. And we're going to open up those databases. Those are really expensive subscription databases. We're going to make them available to you to go ahead and research where your company would fit in the market and how to commercialize that. And we're going to show you how to use them too. Workshop number 3 is going to focus on compliance, which is a really, really key component in writing proposals. Compliance is one of the core C's that you really want to hit in your proposal always, to be able to not make it into the circular file, aka the trash can. So you never want to end up there. So we're going to focus on compliance. We're also going to teach you how to brainstorm correctly, and you're going to practice that and do a hands-on set of exercises on that. And we're also going to teach you how to write faster. We're going to teach you speed writing techniques so that you're never blocked. If you hate writing, we're going to kind of try to get you through that and show you how to write more easily, how to write better. We have a lot of participants who got out with the tools out of that session, and essentially that just changed their lives. We're able to write better, faster, more easily. Then we have a pink team review. Now, this is a really special kind of review. We are inviting people who are subject matter experts in your areas. Whatever area, whatever technical area you're going to bid on, we're going to actually bring in people who are business experts and subject matter experts in those areas are going to review that, and also proposal expert is going to review that as well. So you're going to have at least 2 reviewers per each proposal that we're going to be looking at. And our participants last year thought it was tremendous. It was just literally an entire approach altering kind of view from those participants. And then workshop number 4, we're going to teach you on budget, proposal graphics. Budget is this cost proposal, right? So that's essentially the cost piece, and it can be really tricky, and there's so many gotchas in that process. So we're going to actually walk you through everything, how to fill out those forms, what you're going to put in, how to justify your budget, how to develop your budget, all of those pieces. And then your graphics is how do you make your proposal attractive? How do you present your schedule? How do you present your business model? How do you present pieces that are really impactful, like any kind of flow charts and everything else? We're going to give you tools for that. We're going to give you templates. Essentially, you're going to be able to design that during that workshop. After that, we're going to get into the red team review. Now, red team review is when your draft is going to be about 90% ready, and you're going to have a chance to have another set of reviewers go through your proposal and give you critical feedback. And you'll have a chance to also talk to them afterwards to get clarification, to ask questions, to run your ideas by them, and help you make your proposal even better. Then workshop number 5 is going to be editing and desktop publishing. We're going to actually teach you how to get your document looking professional, how to make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and you submit a document that is absolutely wonderful. And a lot of the times what we did, we we essentially last time had you print your proposal, put that up on the proposal wall, and within small groups, everybody got a chance to have your colleagues look at those proposals and help you go ahead and make them better. So some of that peer review feedback was tremendous in companies' abilities to make their message clearer and better. And then workshop number 6 is when we're going to be sitting there making sure that we're finalizing the last pieces of the proposal, last bits of the proposal, getting it ready for submission, uploading it to the right sites, making sure that everything works, and because that can be tricky too, right? And then you hit the submit button at the end. And that's when you're going to make sure also that you're done. And so what's going to happen in this process? A lot of the times we are going to go ahead and help you sort of instill that discipline, right? So people do this. People join a cohort to lose weight. People join a cohort to get fit. Like they start running a marathon, they go with the group or something like that. This is kind of like that. A lot of the times entrepreneurs don't have the self-discipline to go ahead and do something like that alone, especially if this is your first time. You have never tried to submit a proposal. And if they're trying to do it alone, a lot of the times you just, you can extend the deadline. Let's say that you didn't have time today, some other projects interfered, you didn't do that tomorrow, and then you see that the year went by, a second year went by, and then you see somebody else with a similar idea now making a killing on the market. And that's the most frustrating feeling for an entrepreneur, to see that you had that, you were ahead of the game, you had that idea, you could have ridden that wave, but no, you waited, right? So this is an opportunity for you to be there with a cohort, with a set schedule, with a lot of structure, with a lot of education, with a lot of feedback built into that process, building your overall business skills, building your business development skills, and also being held accountable for the deadlines in order for you to submit that. So here's some more detail on those workshops, right? So you have different workshop topics. Workshop 1, that's what we're going to cover there, overview of the SBIR STTR program, how to win an NSF SBIR STTR grant and obtain follow-on non-dilutive funds, how proposal plan and schedule are going to work. We're going to walk through the outlines we're going to give you and the content requirements. So you're going to have a structure and a template right there with us. And ahead of time, we're going to also help you with the pitch. But then we're going to work through the proposal. There's going to be business model development and lab tool set explanation and all the next steps. We're going to explain to you how the whole thing is going to work. Workshop number 2 is going to be a project plan, commercialization and TEDCO market research kiosks that I mentioned earlier. So we're going to go through project planning, looking at timelines and Gantt charts for your project, looking at commercialization process for innovation, and we're going to look also at navigating the databases available at TEDCO's market research kiosks that we're going to give you access to. Workshop number 3 is going to be about compliance, brainstorming, and speed writing. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to focus on compliance first, but then we're going to dive very quickly on how do you make your sections compelling. That's the other C of the proposals. So there's going to be brainstorming on content. We're going to cover foundations of writing faster and better, the psychology of writing, the correct writing process, and then using modern tools that help you write faster, that go beyond just your fingers and the keyboard and your brains, right? So what else can you use? We're going to cover that. So the pink team, again, is a feedback mechanism on participants' performance and proposal quality to date. You're going to get that feedback. It's going to be very candid, but it's going to help you get better. And the standard is 60% NSF ready proposal that is compliant. Workshop number 4 is going to be about budget proposal and graphics. Those are kind of the opposite, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain kind of things, to balance it out, to make sure it's not too dry for you. And those are 2 really key pieces of the proposal. So cost proposal development is going to be one of the key pieces, but also proposal graphics, visuals, and principles of design. We're going to give you graphics templates, and going to work on your conceptualization and rendering skills right there in the workshop. The red team review is going to give you feedback on proposal quality, and the standard will be 90% NSF ready within 10% of the page count, and compliant and compelling. And then we're going to have workshop 5, which is editing and desktop publishing. So there's going to be proposal editing and desktop publishing in Microsoft Word, self-editing and editing automation, an introduction to read aloud review process for a published submission. We're going to do a peer review of your proposals at that point and look at your hard copy to make sure that you're getting where you need to get. Workshop number 6 is going to be on proposal preparation for submission and submission itself. So we're going to do final preparation for submission, proposal wall reviews again to make sure that everything got covered, loading proposals in the portal, and hitting the submit button. And then we're going to do the surveys and the course feedback to make sure that we're continuing to improve this if this ever happens again, hopefully. Right? So let's talk about eligibility real quick. Can you participate? That's always a big question, right? So applicant has got to be a small business, must be primarily U.S. owned, U.S. citizen, and U.S. permanent resident. Research must be done in the United States. You cannot offshore this part by the rules of the program. And investors cannot own majority of your business. So if they do, you would not be eligible for the program. Not just the lab, but the program itself. So Maryland small business, what does that mean? You have to be a for-profit Maryland small business, and definition of small business for the SBIR STTR is including all of your affiliates, 500 or fewer employees. It's by employee size strictly. And woman-owned small business, WSB, as a small business at least 51% owned and controlled by female U.S. citizens. Small disadvantaged business is a small business at least 51% owned by one or more individuals who are both socially and economically disadvantaged. So there are detailed definitions available. You can look them up on our website when you're applying. But you should know if you are that. And again, you don't have to be woman-owned or socially and economically disadvantaged to apply. Just understand that we're going to give preference to those categories that are typically underrepresented. Now, what is rural small business? Rural small business are the businesses located in Talbot, Carolyn, Dorchester, Wacomico, Somerset, Worcester, Cecil, Harper, Kent, Queen Anne's, North Baltimore, Frederick, Washington, Allegheny, Garrett, Carroll, Charles, Calvert, or St. Mary's counties. So those are the rural small businesses. Again, those are the businesses that get preference during your application process. TEDCO will check with Maryland tax authorities on your registration status. This is something really important to know. Last year, we had a lot of issues. The companies didn't even know that they were out of status. And a lot of those things took very quick sort of phone call or set of documents to submit to fix. So it's fixable. The earlier you apply, the better. So you'll know that there is an issue, or you'll have a chance to fix that. So do apply and take care of those issues if they do exist. If you don't have a company yet, don't be discouraged. You just must reside and work in Maryland, and you will need to register your business as soon as possible. So you don't have to rush through that, but it's something that you'll need to do in order to submit the grant proposal. Now, also, to be eligible, you have to be, so we're not accepting companies who have already won a phase 1 proposal, right? But if you had written a phase 1 proposal and it wasn't successful, you can definitely apply. So also, you should have a new idea. Can you apply if you have already developed a solution and you're trying to sell it? No. Right? So SBIR STTR program funds innovative research and development. So if you're looking for that to be an outlet to sell something that you've already come up with, matured, and you're just looking for a new sort of revenue stream, that's not for you. So with that said, it's okay to have done related work. It's okay to say, hey, you know, we have an existing technology, but now this is to investigate new uses of that technology, new markets for that, new applications. That's where that may be very useful, right? So the expectation is good research that will lead to a commercial product that will also benefit the nation. And you kind of want to take into consideration the differences between the SBIR and STTR program, right? So there are more agencies that do SBIR versus STTR. In this particular case, NSF does both. So that's, something that you may want to look at for phase 2, and how you would do phase 2 and kind of decide on that. There are some highlights that I'm going to go into. There are great resources, and you can look on the SBIR website to look up more detail on that. But just to give you a little bit of highlights, what's really important about SBIR is when you look at this, you have the 33% of that could be subcontracted, but 66% of all the work needs to be done by you as a small business, right? So the subbing is kind of minimized there. Only a third, a little less than a third of that work can be subbed out or given to consultants, for example, that you're using that are not part of your business, 1099s. So now you don't have to be in the US, but all the research and development work must be done in the US theoretically, right? So, but since you're a Maryland small business, in this particular case, we're a Maryland kind of initiative, right? So that's why we're emphasizing that this has to be a Maryland small business. The one piece that's really, really important here is that you have to have a principal investigator. A principal investigator is somebody who is highly credible in this area of research where you are looking to find out like what is available, and the PI will have overall responsibility for the project. They have to be credible in terms of their education, work, and project management experience. So I will tell you something. If you're just a generalist project manager and all your experience is really in running the business and not necessarily in science or engineering or whatever it is that you're doing, then you probably would not be the best person for the PI position. So you want to make sure that you have somebody in your team that is credible, that whose resume looks good from that perspective. And also, they have to be your employee. They must be primarily employed by you during the SBIR work period. And the PI cannot be full-time employed elsewhere, like be a professor somewhere at a college during the SBIR award period. So now STTR is a little different, right? So you'll see that you can actually do, it's kind of flipped, right? So you can do up to 40% of the small business. So that's a minimum, certain, not up to, but over 40% as a small business. And then 30 to 60% would go to a research institution like a university. So the intellectual property will belong to you, but there should be important resources from the research institution used in the technology's development. And it's a little easier with the principal investigator requirement here because the research will be done in that lead from their research institution. So in that case, you're not not committed to furnishing that talent as your employee. So let me talk about the NSF. Why do I pick NSF? They are very flexible, right? So they have a rolling, continuous submission cycle. So there's no hard and fast deadline. A lot of times when you apply to DOD or other agencies, they have a period that you have to submit a proposal in. And it's a fairly intense period. And what we found, it was really, really tough for the companies that were participants of our cohort to stick to that really aggressive set of deadlines while you guys are trying to live your lives, right? So you probably have a job, you probably are doing something else too. So it's really, really tough. And we wanted to have something that is flexible, that allows us some fudge time and allows us to build in all of the activities and give you enough time to do your homework. Now one interesting thing about NSF, it has a project pitch requirement. If you're accepted into the program, we're going to show you how to do a project pitch and give you feedback on that. And what the government does is they review those pitches, and it is a short pitch, it's like 3 pages basically. But then you have to be invited to submit a proposal. If you did not have an approved pitch, you cannot submit. So that's one of the key factors in making sure that you can participate as well. So you'll have to make sure as soon as you are accepted into the cohort, so you need to hurry up with that application process. We're going to go ahead and start that process come December. So you also need to make sure that your ideas actually fall within the areas that NSF is interested in. And NSF, that's another reason why we picked NSF. It has such a broad set of areas. And the areas are really open, right, to you, to your ideas, to whatever it is that you're trying to pitch. There are other agencies that are very specific, like a lot of the DoD agencies are very specific as to what they're trying to obtain. But NSF is really, their mission is to advance the impact, positive impact on the world by the technology. So essentially, it is very broad areas. And it has to be just innovative. It has to be altering, just groundbreaking to the humanity, to the planet, to whatever it is, to the society. So it has to make a difference. And annually, NSF awards roughly $200 million to 400 companies across nearly all technology and market sectors. So go to that link, and you will see that it lists the topics, and then if you click on each topic, you'll get the detail of what that actually entails and see if your invention, if your idea actually fits one of those topics. Just make sure you run through that to apply, before you apply. And here's some additional questions to consider for proposal success. So what related work have your PI and team have done? It's very important that you have done something related to, so you have credibility and you take it seriously. Also, do you have prior, current, or pending support of similar proposals or awards? Now, if you don't win those, then that's fine. But if you do win them, and you win the proposal that you submit through our lab, then you will have to choose which one you're going to pick, right? So consider that. Also, you have to look at any peer-reviewed research regarding feasibility of what you're proposing. Now, the government will take a risk, but they will not take a risk that's completely unfounded. Like you have a dream and there's like really nothing to support that dream. So you have to look and make sure that there's something available that's written in this area. Do you think there could be any patents resulting from your invention? Do you have access to the right facilities and equipment for research, or can you find that while you're getting ready for this? How will you commercialize this technology? Do you have an idea? And what will be the commercial and societal benefits? Again, NSF really cares for those benefits, so you'll have to articulate them. We'll help you, but you'll have to start thinking about that now. And also, will you be able to gather letters of support? Now, a very brief word on letters of support. What does that mean? Letters of support are not endorsements saying, hey, I'm a doctor and I think that this medical device's idea is really sound and I think those guys are great and I support them. That's not what it is. It is, hey, I'm a doctor and I'm going to go ahead and market this device and I have the connections into blah, blah, blah manufacturing facility, and at my clinic, we're going to buy this device the moment it's available in order for us to go ahead and make our lives better. Or I'm a doctor, I'm gonna, once this gets approved, I'm also gonna match the funding because this is so important for my patients to get that in the future. So it has to be tangible support. It has to be something that someone is doing actively or contributing to or donating or whatever it is to go ahead and help you implement that idea. And especially in the area of marketing, the SBIR really doesn't fund marketing, but if somebody can help you with marketing, with sales, with kind of getting that product to the market, that would be really a great kind of letter of support to have in your proposal. Also, what's important in the SBIR STTR proposal is the emphasis on innovation. So you have to have a novel approach. You cannot be a me too that somebody else is doing and you're just doing a slightly different flavor of that. So, and it has to be a pressing problem or need identified in those mission areas that I provided a link for you guys to go to. The approach proposed should be an unproven and involve an element of technical risk. Yes, the government wants to take that risk. They think that risk is warranted. As people say, if you do not risk, you do not drink champagne. Right? So there has to be technical risk. It cannot be something that is just a cakewalk. Otherwise, it's just not groundbreaking, probably, or innovative. It must clearly identify the innovation in your proposal, right? So basically you'll have to tell a really good story. Again, this is where we come in with that help. But you want to make sure that your description of innovation is not left to the imagination of the reviewers. And the SBIR STTR proposal lab will help you articulate that, essentially, again, to make sure that this works. Now, what is your commitment? You'll have to attend all the workshops. You'll have to clear your schedule for those days when the workshops happen. Other than like dire emergencies, you've been in an accident, you died, oh God forbid, right? So that kind of thing. So other extenuating circumstances. So it's 100% metric there for attendance. You'll have to also abide by the assignments deadlines. You have to complete your assignments on time, which keeps the whole cohort at the same pace without holding back others. It enables us to learn about the problems, correct them early. If you're running into some sort of problem, we'll have a chance to advise you on that. And it also helps you submit a winning proposal so that your work is not in vain. You haven't wasted the time. It increases the chance that your great idea will get funded because you will be in just the right step to advance further, right? So if you fall behind, you will not be ready for the next workshop. You will not be ready for a pink team. You will not be ready for a red team. So that's kind of bad. We want to avoid that. And of course, once you're kind of kept up with all of the activities and you do all the work that's required, it keeps the stress level down for everyone involved. Because we reviewers also get the high blood pressure when we see something that wasn't done, or we want to make sure that you are doing a good job, right? So here's where you're going to apply, and here's the deadline, right? So we're currently interviewing applicants. There will be an interview there to make sure that you're qualified, that you're ready for something like that, right? So that's not a waste of your time, not a waste of our time, and you're not taking a spot for somebody who is ready, right? So you want to apply for an interview in 5 minutes from this webinar, right? So just make a goal or whatever, next hour. Apply for the lab at, and this is the link, https oistglobal-solutions.com/SBIR-proposal-lab, right? So it'll take you to our website. There's an application there. And the deadline is December 31st. But remember, it is first come, first serve. If we fill the cohort in the next 2 weeks, even though you waited to apply for December 31st, the best you can count on is a waiting list spot. Even if you're like super duper qualified for the lab. So you'll be waitlisted. And if somebody drops out, we'll invite you in. Other than that, no. So go ahead and make sure that you do apply as fast as possible. And we got a bunch of spots filled already, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor for questions now, guys. So let me know what kind of questions you have. Or if any of the faculty, any of the staff want to clarify anything that I haven't covered, you're welcome to do that too. So make sure that you type your questions in the question field, or let me know that you have a question and you would like to speak up, and I will unmute you because they are right now moderator muted. Yes, the copy of the slides, we're going to go ahead and send the copy of the slides to all the attendees, and we're also going to send a link to the recording. We're also going to post this recording on our website. Now, the question here is, you mentioned STTRs don't require PIs. Does this mean that they can be led by a person within the small business? So they are led project managed within a person in a small business, but the researcher lead comes from the institution. So they can be employed by the institution. So it does not require you, I would say, it does not require you to employ the PI. You will always have an RI that's going to be leading that project, but you're going to be in charge of that project. Essentially, it doesn't have to be your employee. Now, can you talk about any successes that came out of the last year's cohort? This is from Janine. So yes, so we have a lot of the proposals right now are still currently in source selection. The timeline for that is about, we were told by the NSF, about 5 to 6 months. So it's a fairly involved process. And we had one awardee that already came through, though, and his name is Evandro, and his company, Agility, they are essentially have an advanced manufacturing process flow, and you'll see that in our on our page. It actually is featuring him and his company, and they are essentially what they did is they got it very quickly through the process, and they are very successful now, and they're already underway executing that. So there was also, what's very interesting with this process is there's a lot of feedback that the members received. So one of our members had written a wonderful proposal, but she didn't have enough data to substantiate some of her stuff, and she knew going in she didn't. That was the feedback that she'd received. So she has a chance to resubmit that proposal once she does some additional research, but she has a ton of pointers as to now she knows exactly how to win that award. So she's working actively on getting that data collected so that she can resubmit. So those are the kind of the early successes that we can talk about. But some of the metrics, I don't know, Frank, there have been a number of people who actually have submitted proposals that never thought they would submit proposals, people who didn't know about that, and essentially they were able to go ahead and complete those proposals and get them in. So that was a big win for them as well. And by the way, we're in this particular lab, we are essentially not bringing in people who already know what they're doing proposal-wise. A lot of them don't, and so that was really starting from zero, from scratch, in actually building up their expertise. Frank, did I hear your voice?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the personal accounts. There's so for the proposal lab, the feedback I got from many of the participants was that not only were they able to use the skills, the business development skills, the understanding market research, understanding, how to demonstrate innovation in a very in a way that's going to be compelling to the government. There's some of this, even just the skills like speed writing, outlining how to talk to, how to speak government ease. There's like a number of skills that were not only invaluable to the cohort members that they told me throughout, that these were many these were all PhDs or MDs, very smart people that all told me that they were learning a lot throughout the process. But some of them told me that they were now so confident that they were not afraid to continue to network, to outreach, to do other projects and do other business work that they would have not had the confidence without the course. So it was a huge, there's a lot of feedback in that regard, that it really not only inspired them to that they could do it, but it gave them the skills to be confident in themselves, that they could move forward with their ideas in a way that was going to be compelling.
Yeah, and Frank, just to modify a little bit of what you're saying, I didn't just tell you in addition to just telling you that was something that got documented in our fairly extensive survey at the end of the workshop. So that was the feedback that we got, is overwhelmingly positive with the skills that people developed. So now I have a next question here, is from Ron. Ron, do you want to bring that up? If you can just unmute yourself, or are you muted among the attendees? I'm just looking for where you are in the list. Did you just dial in? There you are. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You should be able to talk now. Ron, are you able to talk?
Let's see.
Yeah, there you are.
All right. I wanted to make sure that people understood that not only does the government let you keep all the rights to the IP developed in your phase 1 SBIR from the research that you do, but if the government ever wants to procure something based on that intellectual property, you have a sole source position for future acquisitions. So that means they can award you a contract or make purchases from you based on that intellectual property without having to compete, without having to bid. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention, since you brought up Airgility, they're primarily an unmanned aerial systems company, and that was their related work for their advanced manufacturing proposal, because they wanted to use advanced manufacturing for their unmanned aerial systems. And so the company was established, they got a product, they're doing some sales and everything, but they needed advanced manufacturing done in a way that nobody else was doing. And as they developed it for themselves, they realized there's probably a market for others who would need it. And they got the funding from NSF to move that forward. So that's a prime example on that one. The other thing I'll mention about Airgility, they were one of the more disciplined participants in our class cohort, and they stayed, and at the end of the last workshop finalized a proposal and hit submit. And that's one of the reasons why they got feedback quicker than some of the others. And then one last thing I'll mention, if you wanted metrics about how well this program works, NSF for the first time last year implemented this project pitch, where you have to submit a project, a 2-pager on your project with a cover letter, and they decide if they want to see a proposal from you. It was a brand new requirement. Nobody knew it was going to be there. It happened just as we kicked off our cohort. We worked with our cohort, and 100% of the cohort participants got an invitation from NSF to submit a proposal. So that was one of the early feedbacks about how well this works.
Yep, great. Thank you, Ron. And feel free to chime in to answer any of the other questions. So what does RI stand for? So research investigator, I believe. Ron, correct me?
RI, where is that coming from, the context?
The context of the fact that the PI is not necessarily, the PI can be from the institution, and they're referred to as RI.
Oh, okay. I think this is related to discussion about the STTR program, and the RI there is a research institution. Think college, university, nonprofit research foundation.
Yes.
And
so have a principal investigator from the research institution. Right.
So that's one of the differences about STTR. The principal investigator does not have to come from your organization. They can be by way of your required collaboration with a research institution.
So in other words, if there's a professor that is teaching full-time, but you really would like to be a collaborator on this project, STTR may be the way to go, because that professor cannot be full-time employed with your company at the same time. So that's why the provision is there. And
sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need that level of expertise to develop the project, but then you may not need the professor to be a full-time member of your company to take it to market. So that's one of the things the STTR program recognizes.
all right. The other question that we have is, let's see, just to clarify, do you have to be a Maryland business to apply? Correct. You would have to be a Maryland business. And Ron, can you go a little bit into what kind of checks do you go through when we are checking, or what kind of problems have you seen before for the Maryland small businesses?
All right. Well, the simplest thing I can tell you is the reason it has to be a Maryland small business is because, as I think everyone can appreciate, you have to be true to the source of the dollars. So we won this funding from the Small Business Administration, which requires U.S. businesses, because their funding is U.S. tax dollars. But to win this proposal, we had to have an endorsement from the governor of our state, so that's Maryland, and there had to be matching funds brought to the table, and that comes from Maryland, which, if you trace the source back, is the Maryland taxpayer. So again, that's why it has to be Maryland. The way we check on this, we look in the Maryland's department, the Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation, to see, number one, that the company is registered to do business in Maryland. We look for their principal place of employment to be Maryland, and we look for them to be in good standing with the tax office. In other words, all their paperwork and taxes are up to date. And we have had companies that did not meet that initially. When I find that out and they're otherwise a good candidate for the cohort, I work with them on how to correct that, how to fix that, and we move forward.
Well, thank you so much. And let me see if there are any other questions, guys. This is the last call for questions. And if not, we're going to go ahead and conclude. All right. Well, thank you very much for your participation. Hopefully you guys take the time to fill out the application, and we are really looking forward to having you as part of this cohort. Goodbye.